Hi, I'm Randy Nesse from the Arizona State University Center for Evolutionary Medicine. Our guest today is Yong, who's just published a book called I Contain Multitudes, really the definitive source for those who want to learn about the microbiome. Welcome, Ed.
Hi, good to be here.
So you got interested in this not last week or last month, but quite a while ago, is that right?
That's right. I've been writing about the microbiome, so I use the word in the broader sense, the community of microbes that share the lives of humans and other animals. I started writing about this field about 10 years ago. The first pieces I wrote were about aphids and about mice. So a paper by Nancy Moran's group showing that aphids can swap beneficial microbes that provide them with resistance to parasites or heat resistance through sex. And then a few short months later, another paper showing that the gut microbes of rodents and humans can influence the way we process nutrients and might be affecting our predisposition towards obesity.
So aphids are such a fabulous model because sometimes they have sex to reproduce and sometimes they don't bother and they just reproduce asexually. What's going on there?
And yeah, they also have fascinating microbes that live within them. So aphids have a bacterium called Buchnera that lives inside their cells and provides them with dietary supplements, essential nutrients that are missing from their diet of plant sap.
So if you give them antibiotics, that's bad.
Yeah, so if they lack these organisms, they would just die. They would be unable to feed off the food source that they are adapted to. And they also have a lot of secondary symbionts that are present in some and absent in others, and that confer other abilities like resistance to parasitic wasps and other kinds of threats. And these seem to be.
So do the bacteria in our guts do anything beneficial like that for us?
Very much so. They may not protect us against wasps, but they certainly help to digest our food. They provide vitamins that are missing from our diets. They allow us to. They help to protect against disease. They help to train and build our immune system. They affect the development of different organ systems. And they may even influence our behavior too. So their effects are multitudinous and profound. No corner of our biology is left untouched by their presence.
And it's not just our guts.
It's not just our guts, it's our skin, our nose, our mouth, all sorts of our organs are home to teeming colonies of bacteria and other microbes. And each of these body parts has its own particular menagerie of species that lives there. So each of them is an ecosystem in its own right. So the skin, for example, on my forearm is dry and barren. It's a bit like a desert, whereas my nose and my mouth are hot and humid places that are more like rainforests.
So completely different microbiomes depending on these different ecosystems.
That's right. I mean, just as like different large-scale habitats, different islands will have different animals and plants living on them, so too do different parts of our bodies have their own communities of microbes.
So is it really fair to call them communities as if they're coordinated with leaders and plans, or are they more just a whole bunch of different bacteria, viruses, and other things living together as best they all can?
Yeah, I think it's possibly the latter, but I feel that community is a reasonable word for that too. We think of it in like human terms, obviously, but I think microbiologists would just use the term to refer to a group of organisms that happen to live in the same place. And what makes them, what affects which microbes live where? This is a basic biogeography question that I think we are only starting to really understand. So there's a lot of variation in the human microbiome, for example. Yours is different to mine, it's different to all of our listeners.
But mine's going to be somewhat different after talking with you for a few minutes.
That's right, yeah. They
Millions of bacteria shedding from each of us that we're sharing as we breathe.
A two-way traffic.
Look at that, we've
transferred microbes, exactly. And we change them with meals over the course of the day, all these sorts of things. But I think the underlying variation across the general population, we can only explain maybe about 10% of that at the moment. We're still largely in the dark as to what shapes what lives where. And I think that's true across the board. We're still learning about these basic principles of microbial biogeography.
So some different birds, apparently, even of the same species, have almost completely different microbiomes.
Yeah.
Are the individual humans that different in their microbiomes, or are we more similar?
Not too much. I mean, we do have a distinctive human microbiome that looks different from, say, that of chimpanzees or gorillas. There is a lot of variation across the population. It seems to vary a lot from species to species. So species to species. So some have this very distinctive core. Within humans, there's been a long search for a core microbiome, so species and strains that are common in every person. And I think that a lot of scientists would argue that that doesn't exist. So there's nothing that's in everyone. Some things are in many, many people, but there doesn't seem to be anything that's universal. At least when you get into fine levels of detail. What there might be are cores in terms of, say, functions, in terms of roles that these microbes play. So maybe there are certain nutrient, there's always going to be a species that produces nutrient X, or that produces metabolite Y, or that has this effect on the immune system, or that sort of thing. And it's just like our cities have. Every city has has lawyers and police officers and doctors, but it's different individuals who play those roles from place to place. And perhaps the same is true for the microbiome.
Good. So to wrap up our discussion about general microbiome, can you say anything more about why it's become so popular just recently? Something's changed. What is it?
So I think there are two reasons. So the first is technological. So our ability to study microbes has grown in leaps and bounds over the last couple of decades or so. Rather than just having to culture them in the laboratory, grow them in flasks and beakers and petri dishes, we can now identify who's where by looking at their DNA. And that ability to look at microbes through sequencing, and the increasing power and the lowering cost of sequencing has meant that we can study the microbiomes of the entire world in a very, very different and more powerful way than we used to do. Then also there are cultural reasons. I think scientists who studied microbes that weren't to do with diseases were often confined to these small silos in disparate corners of biology. So people would study insect symbionts or coral symbionts, and then people who looked at the human microbiome were based in dentistry or gastroenterology, and all of these different peripheral fields that have then recently started coming together. And I think people have started understanding that microbiology actually undergirds a lot of the other biology that we see, and it touches on so many disciplines. So the human microbiome currently extends tendrils into immunology, neuroscience, pediatrics.
So it's really a connecting science that uses all kinds of things.
It is, yeah. I think it's surprisingly foundational. You could teach an intro to biology course using microbiology as the sort of foundational lecture.
That would be a wonderful course.
Yeah, so I think Margaret McFaul and I from the University of Hawaii now, and her colleague Diane Newman actually created a course for freshmen, I think, that was like this, that used microbiology as introductions to all aspects of intro-level biology.
We might well see if someone wants to do that here.
Yeah.
Let's move on in a minute.
Yeah, sure.